Hello and welcome to the third of a multi-part series analyzing Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I will be playing through the entire game and commenting on whatever I deem important or interesting. Though the occasional personal input or anecdote is possible, the goal of this analysis is to be objective, to go beyond how I personally feel about Sekiro and instead try to understand it and assess its strengths and weaknesses from a neutral position. This project will take a long time to finish and the end result will be multiple hours long, so we'll be dividing it into smaller thematic segments. This one will focus primarily on the mini-bosses chained Ogre and General Tenzen Yamauchi. Though starting with part 1 is advisable for full context, each video can be viewed on its own if you're interested in a particular topic. Finally, if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe for more. Since the very first thing I did upon returning to Ashina Outskirts was to fall off a cliff, I'll take the opportunity to rave about Sekiro's approach to fall damage. Gravity, as we know, is among the toughest bosses from software ever designed, but it's been significantly nerfed in this game. For starters, there's no penalty at all for regular drops, no matter the height. Fall damage only kicks in when you drop into a bottomless pit like I just did. In these cases, you lose just below half of your maximum HP, meaning you won't die if you have more than that. Sekiro is the only From Software game so lenient on fall damage, but it's a necessary concession I'm glad the devs were willing to make. Wolf is much faster and agile than all other FromSoft protagonists, as are the enemies he faces. Then there's grappling, which is very instinctive but so frequently required to get around that a few mess-ups are bound to happen. Very frustrating mess-ups because you can't resurrect after a deathfall, and you just know unseen aid will always find a way to not bail you out. Sekiro is a much faster game and features more pits than Michael Jackson has hits. Fall damage, working as it does, saves many players' hair from being torn to bits. What's truly unique here is the percentage-based penalty. This studio is the poster child of anti-scaling, yet scaling can be found in arguably their most hardcore game. Going for a fixed HP penalty would have made fall damage either too demoralizing for new players or too insignificant in the late game, so I'd say scaling the damage with the player's total HP is a perfectly reasonable solution. Speaking of scaling, I remember seeing conspiracy theories flying around that Sekiro enemies scale up or down with Wolf's health and upgrading vitality does nothing. I usually wouldn't bring up something like that in a video, but it being a microcosm of everything I try to oppose with this channel makes it suitable enough to mention. Such a claim can be tested within a few seconds if you've progressed beyond the first couple of areas, but I suppose that is a few seconds too many. Being a victim takes much less effort after all. Anayama, the merchant sitting here, is actually the looter who tipped us off about the Mist Raven. If you went to Hirata Estate before coming here, he will acknowledge your meeting, though Wolf shows no recollection, adding even more mystery to the Hirata memories.
You don't remember?
You can pay Anayama a nominal fee to learn about the flame barrel, but since we already have it, he gives us oil instead. Oil is yet another way to make the upcoming mini-boss significantly easier, and I can't help but feel that a lesser developer would have gone for a more random reward like a coin purse. It's these little details that From Software thrives in. I also find it very amusing that Anayama gave us the Mist Raven information for free while he was a petty thief, but is only willing to sell his intel now that he's a merchant. Am I sensing a delicate social commentary, Miyazaki? Miyazaki? Eavesdropping on these soldiers reveals that the big bastard up the stairs fears fire, providing context for the merchant's fire-themed hints and gifts. Sekiro guides its players more than usual for a From Software game, possibly a side effect of publishing under Activision, but these back-to-back heavy-handed clues on how to deal with the chained ogre still manage to stand out, telling us about and even handing us the tools to take it down quicker. Chained Ogre is so bafflingly out of place that I tried my hardest to come up with some explanation as to why he is here at all, and even more so why he is completely blocking off progress. The devs weren't oblivious to the mini-boss's potential to be a serious roadblock, or they wouldn't have given players such clear guidelines on how to beat it, so they must have been onto something. I think the idea behind Chained Ogre is the same as the one behind Shinobi Hunter Enshin of Missen back at Hirata Estate. That mini-boss is clearly designed to push us into using Mikiri counters. It mostly fails that task thanks to a bunch of enemies in the arena changing the entire dynamic of the fight, and the boss itself dying way too quickly to teach us anything, but that was the idea anyway. Chained Ogre, as easy as he is to hate, is a much better version of what Enshin should have been. A one-on-one fight that is easy enough without being a complete joke if you take the game's hint and use fire, while also being mightily punishing to those who refuse to obey and try to win their own way. The Ogre's moveset of an enraged wrestler is intentionally odd and absurdly damaging in order to make parrying or blocking him frustrating enough that players would seek other means to beat him. Throwing that at the player after teaching them to parry for a couple of hours admittedly borders on diabolical, but I still tend to lean toward this mini-boss being overhated and misunderstood in its role as a teaching tool. Could have Chained Ogre been a better boss? Yes, its grab hitbox alone should serve a lifetime sentence in prison, but this educational spanking is exactly what From Software wanted to give us. If you used the flame barrel or knew the flame barrel would make this fight infinitely easier, yet refused to use it because using anything but a sword in any FromSoft game is cheesing, then Chained Ogre was a success. I doubt the Ogre will become anyone's favorite boss anytime soon, but seeing it as a lesson in making your life as a shinobi easier by any means necessary can hopefully shine a more positive light on this big red-eyed bastard. From Software at least made sure that the struggle was well worth it by giving us a healing buff in addition to the regular reward of a prayer bead. These two for the price of one deals only come with the more challenging mini-bosses in the game, another indication that the devs were very self-aware when designing Chained Ogre's difficulty. We can choose to fight one of two mini-bosses right after the Ogre. Suffice it to say that electing to forego the warning on the temple and proceed to fight the Headless is the more opportunistic approach that will result in guaranteed death on a first playthrough. I do appreciate that FromSoft provides divine confetti so the culture shock isn't amped up to the max, even if I do question how many first-time players will have the awareness to use the item when facing the Headless this early, let alone make it count. First playthrough or not, we'll do the sensible thing here and turn back to clear the yard. This is how you do a mini-boss surrounded by regular enemies. There are 6 soldiers scattered around the arena that can be picked off one by one. If you take care of the bell ringer up top first, you can do so without raising an alarm, giving you an easy stealth kill for the boss's first health bar. The arena is wide and vertical, allowing for quick maneuvers if you get caught in the open by the soldiers or the mini-boss or both. The boss himself, General Tenzen Yamauchi, is imposing but rather slow to close the distance, thus giving us not just the space but also the time to take care of the surrounding mob before facing him. All of the above serves to further highlight the miserable execution of the Enshin of Missen and Juzo the Drunkard fights. The other early game mini-bosses complemented by a sizable mob. Tenzen Yamauchi can be faced alone without having to desperately scramble to clean up the arena of heckling mobs, which is a good characteristic for a mini-boss in a game so intimately tied up to single enemy combat. Tenzen Yamauchi is one of several mini-boss fights against generals, all of which play similarly with slight variations in the movesets. It is as close to a pure blade versus blade duel as it gets, and yes, I do include Genichiro and Ishin in that statement. They use lightning, fire and a bloody handgun against poor Wolf. The generals though, they have nothing but their trusty katana. Easy to see how most Sekiro players appreciate fighting them, even if they lean toward the easier side of the difficulty spectrum. We all know how much of a challenge it is to become a fan favorite in the From Software community without being brutally difficult, so here's to honorable duels versus Ashina generals. And here's to another part of this analysis. 3 down, many more to go. When we return, we will be facing our first main story boss, and you wouldn't want to miss out on that now, would you? See you soon, I hope.